Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of No Time to Die. My name is Daniel, I'm one of your hosts, and joining me to finally talk about Daniel Craig's final entry in the 007 James Bond saga is Shahbaz.
Hello.
And Anthony.
Hello.
It feels a little surreal to be doing this because we did have tickets to this movie nearly 2 years ago. When we're looking at the ye old calendar,
Yeah, nearly 2 years ago.
Nearly 2 years ago, we had tickets for this movie, and here we are now, September 2021, finally ready to talk about it.
We're here. What would your 00 number be?
3.
3?
003.
0010.
Is that still a...
Yeah.
No, man.
Wouldn't you be 010?
No.
You'd be the loser. You'd be the guy that's double digits. They don't hang out with
He's a
him.
quadruple digit.
I'm
man.
006.
So you die a lot.
Why do I die a lot?
Because 006 is always die.
And he's always dead.
Well, I mean, so does 003.
Do they?
No one even talks about 003. That's how dead he is. And 0010? Or
0010, it's a elitist. Like,
0010. I don't. It's just,
I don't know.
interesting.
They don't have that.
they do, because I just made it.
I just got given the rank of 0010.
How many kills do you need to get 0010? Like 5.
5 kills. It's more. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Shay, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so glad we got to watch this movie. Big James Bond fan here. You know, I'm out there always trying to kill people so that I can also get 00 status one day.
Got you.
Not for anything else. I'm killing bad guys.
Are you sure?
Yeah, keep,
Are you sure?
Keep talking, Shay.
I'm
Keep
pretty
it
sure.
moving.
I think you're a serial killer at this point.
Well, I mean, we'll find out on the podcast.
As always, you can catch a brand new episode of the Movie Podcast every single Monday, and you can look out throughout the week for our review episodes, just like this one and all the latest movies and series. If you want to write in and be part of the show, make sure you follow us at the Movie Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd, and don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars. You know, we're leaving you reviews all the time that you could listen to.
Ooh.
We want you to start leaving us some.
Well, that's a good one.
You know,
That's
it's
a
good.
good one.
I just
You
thought of that
just
right now.
turned the tables
turned
on
it.
the
I
people.
Our
give them the
listeners
Uno
just-
reverse card.
They're shaking their heads.
They're driving to work right now. They're like, damn, Daniel.
Dude, one guy
got me.
One guy literally let go of his steering wheel and he's like, shit, here we go.
He got me. Make sure you leave a review first and put your hands back on the
Yeah.
wheel. Also, don't forget to join our Discord and write into the show hello at TheMoviePodcast.ca. We have some announcements on the show. We have a brand new episode out that you can listen to right now where we talk about the Super Mario movie. What else did we talk about on that episode, Shay?
We talked about, you know, Netflix, their whole
event, the Marvel Disney.
Yeah, the Marvel.
Yeah.
We
Copyright
talked
lawsuit.
a lot about the trailers that came out throughout the week, as well as
There's some secret reviews in that episode.
Yeah,
Were
we
they
did-
secret though?
we did
Not at all.
Tammy Faye and
Not
we
at
did
all.
What If.
They weren't
episode
so
6.
secretive. But they were definitely like hidden in.
I hate that you just caught us off guard and remembering our episode because we're just like
And Anthony doesn't listen to them.
That's
I don't
How do you
listen.
know?
I don't remember.
Anthony doesn't even listen when we are recording it.
Yeah, Anthony's wearing headphones right now too, so I'm surprised he can hear us.
I'm just reading your lips.
That's a great skill. Wow.
Speaking of other reviews, though, there are lots of reviews, especially from TIFF. TIFF feels like it was a year ago at this point. There's lots of reviews from our time at TIFF, Last Night in Soho, Dune, and more. Also, we have some incredible guests that we've had on the Movie Podcast over the last couple months, and lots more to come. But today is all about No Time to Die. This is a film by Cary, Joji, Fukunaga. It is coming out October 8th, 2021, and it stars Daniel Craig for the last time as James Bond, Rami Malek, Léa Seydoux, Lashana Lynch, Ben Whishaw, Naomie Harris, Ana de Armas, Jeffrey Wright, with Christoph, Waltz, and Ralph Fiennes. And I want to say, of course, thank you to our friends at Universal Pictures for inviting us to watch this film. Anthony, please give us that sweet, sweet synopsis.
In No Time to Die, Bond has left active service is enjoying a tranquil life in Jamaica. His peace is short-lived when his old friend, Felix Leiter from the CIA, turns up asking for help. The mission to rescue a kidnapped scientist turns out to be far more treacherous than expected, leading Bond onto the trail of a mysterious villain armed with dangerous new technology.
Now, Shay, I want you to give us your first reaction to this film. I want you to give us your
homework.
There's a few things here.
Okay.
I'm going to catch you off guard again.
Thank you.
Give us your history with the Bond franchise. Give us your history with Daniel Craig's Bond, and then tell us what you thought of this film. Of course.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Starting off, hi, my name's Shay. Second of all, I love Bond. I absolutely am a huge James Bond fan. One of my first Hotmail emails when I was a kid was, and I'm afraid to say it right now.
I was confused when you said Hotmail for a second.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, he's a Hotmail.
ooh. I was like, 9 or 10 years old, and my email was like Shahbaz007@hotmail.com.
Shahbaz still uses that email, by the way.
I actually do. So if you want to send me death threats, that's the email to send it to.
That's the way to go.
Yeah. And so, huge Bond fan growing up. I loved the Brosnan Bond because it was such a 90s thing. I used to love watching them. My grandpa was big on the Sean Connery Bond. And then when Craig was announced, I was excited. I was still young. I went to go see the movies in theaters. I absolutely loved every single one of them. But growing up, sometimes you don't have the best lens on them. Casino Royale to me is still my favorite Bond film. Quantum of Solace, I loved growing up. But then as I get older, I'm like, okay, maybe not the strongest of all Bonds. And then the rest, we'll definitely, I guess, talk about more as we get to this review. But let's talk about this one.
No Time to Die.
No Time to Die. I was nervous going into it because Spectre was one that I was not a huge fan of at all. It was very slow, very boring, and it felt like it wasn't going anywhere. And so far, with this Bond franchise with Daniel Craig, every movie has been in some way intrinsically linked to another. Like they're telling one thorough story in a certain way, which was very different from Brosnan's Bond, where you could just put on any one of them and it wouldn't matter. You could be fresh to the series.
They're very standalone.
Very standalone. Yeah. You could just kind of watch them. And I feel like even the previous Bonds kind of had that similarity too.
Yeah.
With this one, when you're still continuing this baggage that you've kind of built up with Spectre, I was nervous that this one, especially with all the delays and everything too, that this wouldn't live up to the hype or live up to the Bond name. And boy, I'm so glad I'm wrong, because this movie was fantastic. I absolutely loved every minute of this movie. I was watching it and kept thinking, am I supposed to be bored right now? Because I'm not. And typically in a Bond film, at this point of the movie, there's a pacing issue, but there's no pacing issue yet. What's wrong with this movie? And the problem is there wasn't. It was just flowing really well. Every character was interesting. Every moment of this movie felt like it had a purpose. My only, I guess, real complaint about this film is Rami Malek's character, and we'll definitely go deeper into that. He's not really the forefront villain in the movie. There's definitely a lot more about this movie than meets the eye. But overall,
is he a Transformer, by the way?
He is a Transformer. But there's just a lot more to this movie than, just it's a typical Bond villain against Bond. There's less of that and more of a beautiful story to finish off Daniel Craig's Bond era.
And I think that's a great point that you bring up, because his character, Rami Malek's character of Safin, really isn't prominent throughout the film. He definitely is an antagonist. His presence is felt maybe not so much on Bond's side, but more on Madeline's side, right? And I think
by Léa Seydoux.
And I think that's what works really well with his character. Yes, I would have loved to see more of him, but I think in the story that they were telling in this film, I think it worked really well. You mentioned the length and the pacing. Definitely a longer film. This is the longest James Bond movie ever, which I think you will feel. But I think the ride is worth that. Also, I also want to call on what you mentioned, Shay, too, is the trouble that this film has had behind the scenes with not just the delays, but also the director changes and a bunch of other stuff. And for this film to come out as well as it did and be fantastic is incredible.
Yeah.
Anthony, where are you with this film right now?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I am not as much of a Bond fellowship as you two, but I
started the Bond Fellowship. Eh?
I've watched Bond throughout my life, and I always found him as an interesting character. I grew up on the Pierce Bond, and maybe a little bit of the Timothy Dalton, and then later on I would visit the Sean Connery and Roger Moore, and I did that throughout the year last year.
I remember
it took a really long time.
Yeah, that was the pandemic watch for you, right?
Because they became all available, and I'm like, okay, let me go through it, and it was very challenging.
Yeah.
The Bond stories from the past are very long and boring, and once Pierce started the new we'll say the modern day Bond, and it went into Daniel Craig, and Daniel Craig probably being my favorite Bond, the more gritty Bond, the stricter Bond, the
gruff.
Yeah, the one who's not always chiseled and suave, but very
blunt. I think
blunt and believable.
Yeah,
I would
just
say
gritty. It's a very real world Bond.
Coming off his series, I would say Skyfall as well as Casino Royale being my favorite. Quantum of Solace having probably one of my favorite opening sequences, and then even this movie, No Time to Die, being part of that saga of films that Daniel Craig is, and I think that's what he did 5 Bonds.
He did fine. You're just missing Spectre.
Yeah, so 3 out of 5 is not bad for a carrot for Daniel Craig's version of Bond, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the story that was shown. The opening sequence, which wasn't following Bond, it was more of the other characters, which I found unique. I think Cary did a fantastic job taking over the role of director from Danny Boyle, and I think with what he had and what he was given, I think he did a fantastic job directing. Cinematography was fantastic. Score was fantastic. Yes, for me, I felt the length, but then again, I'm very, I don't like sitting in a seat for a very long time, so I get cramps in my legs. I'm like, okay, let's get to it. Let's get to it. And there are some points where if I was editing this movie, I would have adjusted or
maybe tightened it up.
Totally,
right?
Yeah. And I would have involved more sequence with Bond and even Rami Malek's character. I just felt like they didn't have the chemistry that I was looking for for the last version of this film.
Right.
This is the villain. This is, Daniel Craig's Bond's villain. This is the last one. I just felt they had more connection, and I felt it was really only at the end that you see them talk to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's a great point. I think the weakest, and I say weakest with the
biggest air quotes,
biggest air quotes, with the biggest weakest, because everything else is so strong, is the fact that Rami Malek's character doesn't get a lot of screen time, and he's introduced I would say pretty much 2 hours into the film almost. We get to really start to see who he is. Again, he gives a good performance. He's very eerie and strange and just uncomfortable to talk to. But he really isn't. And I think on the car ride home after watching this, I really was thinking, man, he really wasn't Bond's villain. He really was Madeline's villain in this movie. And I think because of that makes him, obviously makes him Bond's villain. He's somebody that Bond has to take down. But to see his performance throughout this film, Rami Malek's performance, I think he's great, and I think he was also announced at a time where he was just coming off the Oscar as well too. So for him to be kind of jumping into the Bond role, Christoph Waltz will, I think, forever be that villain that kind of was the puppet master behind everything out of Bond's films.
I thought he did fantastic for the little sequence that we got from him.
Yeah,
he was great.
He's great.
I'm like, I wish you were the final Bond. Not Spectre. It should have been, this was Spectre. You know what I'm saying? It should have been, this was the end of that.
I agree. Yeah.
But
it worked. I think the way they did it worked though still, because a lot of this movie is defying your expectations, right? Yeah. We see Lashana Lynch really take a step forward into the series, and she's great. I think the supporting cast is the best it's ever been in a Bond film with Daniel Craig. I mean, think the whole Cuba sequence with Ana de Armas, she is just so fun. She was such a fun character that when that sequence ended, I'm like, I love her as an actress, but I just loved her character. I'm like, man, what I would give to get another 5 Bond movies and having her just play off of Daniel Craig.
Or even a spin-off, because the way they portrayed her was very short, but it's also someone who was new into the role.
Right.
And she was very naive, but also very...
she was charming.
She was charming, but she also... when she had to step up, she did.
Right.
And she, leading into it, she's like, oh, this is my first time doing this, guys. I don't know if I'd be scared. I'm going to be,
but then she kicked so much ass. Yeah.
It's like, oh, you stepped up. And even Bond acknowledged that. He's like, damn, even though this is your first time, you're fucking great.
Yeah. It was just so fun. They're sharing the screen together again after Knives Out, and then seeing them together in this, and just seeing their dynamic together, it's so fun. And then seeing Bond with Naomie Harris is great. Seeing Bond with Lashana Lynch is great. Like, I'm Daniel Craig, obviously. I'm giving their actor's name, but like seeing Moneypenny and I guess 007 working with them. It's just so fun. They have such a great camaraderie all together.
Yeah.
And then you introduce Q and you introduce M, and everybody's kind of working together. There's a great team of Bond classic characters here that are just great. They're the best there ever been, and I'm so glad that in his final outing, we really got to see the James Bond that I guess we know from like the archetype of James Bond, but you know, kind of embrace the campiness, embrace who he is, and give a fucking phenomenal send off to Daniel Craig's character, because you know, we know this is his last movie, and damn, they landed it. You know, they landed it.
I really like the combination of the campy Bond as well as this Bond where it's very, very realistic, and even the comedic approach, because you don't really see comedy in a Bond film. It's very like,
unless it was the 90s ones.
There's like this almost like passiveness to it, but this one was very, there are funny moments because Miss Lynch's character, who is a 007, and James Bond's character, who was a past 007, they there's almost like a competitiveness between
of course
them. And you know, when they're in the same room, she's always looking over her shoulder or questioning M's decisions or why she's doing certain things and he's doing certain things. So I like that. I like that they incorporated that. Usually, if you see it, it kind of takes away from the story. But I think for this type of movie, that competition between the two was well paced. And it fit really well. It was away,
and it was professional feeling too.
Yes.
It was never anything where it's like, oh, like, you know, in a lesser film, you would have seen like Lashana Lynch's character somehow turn into the bad guy, or she would have been set up in a different way to kind of be a real antagonist throughout. Where it really wasn't that. It was all just like, this is a professional rivalry that we have going on, and they kept it classy, which I really like.
And they never overplayed it. I think a lot of times movies they harp on it so much that it gets drilled into your brain. But this movie did a really good job of using every moment that it had, like I said in the beginning, to its advantage. You know, I think every side character in this movie is memorable. Even I look back at Billy Magnuson's character. Who, you know, he plays this CIA agent along with Jeffrey Wright's Felix, and they're just such a good pairing and such a good team. And, you know, Billy Magnuson always plays this, you know, silly, goofy guy. And I was like, how is he going to play out in this movie? And it was that right level of comedic tone that he kind of brought into this movie. And throughout the film, when you're seeing his character interact with Bond, he's a fan of Bond.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like seeing that through the eyes of the audience. And I really, really enjoyed every single person's role in this movie. And kind of like what Anthony mentioned, like, you could have spin-offs of almost every character in this movie.
You can. And
you'd tell some great stories, and I think that's a testament to Corey for focusing on all the different actors that he had and giving them all a moment to shine. This is, I would say, and without anything else attached to it, this is the Bond family movie.
Mm-hmm. This also, like, this movie can segue into a lot because, you know, with Amazon Prime now being
the owners of MGM,
there is so much potential for spin-offs for these characters, especially for Lashana Lynch and as well as
Armas.
Yes, just having their own series.
Set them up on an
set
adventure.
Them up together.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I think, I think where we are right now with the way franchises are, you know, Universal and MGM are looking at Bond as like, yeah, like James Bond is the films, we could do that, but there's, like we were saying, there's so many characters in this film world that you don't need, like, you could give them a movie too. You don't have to call it 007. You don't have to call it James Bond. Just call it whatever you want, and then it's within this cinematic universe, and that's fine too.
Totally.
We've been talking a lot about the cinematography. I just wanted to shout out Linus Sandgreen, who is the cinematographer for this movie. You will recognize their work on films like La La Land, First Man, and obviously No Time to Die being the big ones. And
Damien Chazelle's boy.
Yeah.
The cinematography was fantastic. They did a lot of like light leaks, especially There's a forest sequence where, there's always the sunset happening.
Going through the trees.
And it's going through the trees, or even like off the coast near the end where there's the water. Especially the Italy sequences.
I was gonna say, I was waiting for you to bring up the Italy sequences,
Beautiful.
man.
Like you're shocked to see that these places do exist and these towns do exist and people live in them and this is their life, and the way they captured it and just captured that lifestyle where Bond is just trying to live a normal life. And we see it in the trailer. There's that sequence where he goes up those stairs with the bike and
well, we've seen it. We've seen it a lot.
We've seen it a lot. We've seen the cars, the Aston Martins in this. We have a DB5 in there, as well as we'll say
the classic one,
the 70s and 80s Aston Martins. Fantastic. I think the cinematography was great. Norway. They go to Norway. They go to London. They go to Italy. They go to an island, Cuba. Like, there's a lot of locations that they shot really well,
and
Jamaica as well too.
Jamaica, and I really like that. We got the Bond car finally got its due. I think in the series, because they've shown his Aston Martin do things before in this franchise, but in this one, in one sequence, he uses like all the weapons.
Yeah,
and it's just so cool to see that, because I was waiting for just him to use his Aston Martin and absolutely nail it.
And that's the campiness, right? That they embrace, right? Like the gadgets. It's earned now.
Yeah,
it's earned.
Now let's talk a little bit about the music, because we have this, the opening title sequence done by Billie Eilish, and we spoke about it when the song came out. It's a good song, but it's not a good Bond song still.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why is that when that title sequence occurs, it doesn't linger in the brain for too long. And luckily, the rest of the movie is so fantastic that the song and that whole sequence, I was like, okay, like this is really like such a slow, boring song for this movie. Like, I wanted something a bit more to it. And if you're gonna get Billie Eilish to do this song, give her uniqueness.
Let Billie Eilish do it.
Let her do it. Like, she's doing the same thing that Sam Smith did, that Adele did, but not as well as them. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest complaint I have about her song is that there's no percussion in it.
Yeah.
I think that the song itself needed some type of swell of drums that it just hit and it goes hard, because when Skyfall comes in, like, you feel that. The visual, the opening sequence itself, I'll be honest, I don't remember it too much.
Yeah.
But I do remember like Casino Royales. Yeah. I do remember Skyfall. I remember Spectres, because they were very visually distinct. This one I remember there was a lot of cogs, because it was like a clock, and
there was the bullets.
It was the
DNA,
bullets.
Wasn't it on DNA?
Yeah, but there was DNA, but then there he's falling through a bunch of cogs in the clock, and then he's on the hands of the clock, and then it goes.
But the hands were like
and then the guns turn into DNA.
Hot take.
I don't like any Bond opening sequence. I'm like, get to the movie, man.
They're so long.
They're staple.
I get it,
but I get what you're saying.
I would fast forward through it.
Yeah, you'd hit skip intro if there was a real
intro. 100%.
But and I think and here's the thing, I would have loved for this one again. The movie itself. This movie's going to do really well.
Yeah,
it's going to review really well, I believe. But it is a lot more of a muted film in the sense where it's a lot more somber with this movie. So I think when general audiences are going to go into this movie, I'm really curious to see what the general take of this movie, because this movie doesn't have the highs in high octane action that something like Skyfall has.
Yeah.
But it does have really well used action sequences, really well acted scenes, and well placed action scenes. So I'm really curious to see, and I think the song is a bit more reflective of the tone of the movie. But again, I would have loved something a little bit more just memorable. Now,
what about the score? We have Hans Zimmer coming at it, and the whole time we're listening to this, and Zimmer, he's never misses.
Right. Is it Hans Zimmer? Is that
HZ is what I call him.
HZ?
Zed? I don't know what people say.
Zed in Canada.
Zed in Canada?
Yeah.
I think he did a fantastic job. But it's always this funny thing with Hans that you can pinpoint where he takes his inspiration from his own work from.
There's I was like, oh, what's that? I'm getting the little
Lion King in
little
here.
Nodes of Lion King and The Dark Knight,
Inception.
But here's the thing: I heard that we were hearing that, we kind of leaned over to, I was like, oh, this reminds me of like is that somebody, anybody, like somebody. Who are you going after? Rachel. Like
Yeah.
there's the moments of those. There's
Yeah.
tastes of those, but it's still a great score. I was listening to it on the way home. Only the first 3 songs are out, so I was
really?
just or like not even the first 3.
It's out next
It's
week,
like
right? So.
Gun Barrel, which is like 40 seconds long, and then there's a couple other songs on the soundtrack out which are great. So I can't wait for this soundtrack to come out. And I also love this. We don't really talk too much about the name of this movie, No Time to Die.
Yeah.
I think it's like that's a James Bond ass title.
It's a pretty fitting title for this movie, because if you Spectre was Spectre, because you knew like the whole run was Spectre.
Yeah.
Quantum Solace, I don't even know what that ever mentioned, but like No Time to Die, and I think our audience, once they watch it, like they're like, oh, that's a fitting title for this. Definitely. This movie, and it's so in your face. It's great,
and they get one time to die out of there. Like they get at least one character to say it, and I was hoping that there'd be a moment like
what was the line again, Shay?
Time to die.
No, but like how did it go? Like
what time it is? Time to die.
Okay,
is that what it was?
I thought you were gonna say they got one. Fuck, because they did get a fuck in there. They took inspiration off clearly from our show. Yeah. They said they got one per episode.
Because Ralph looked at the camera and he winked.
He's like, movie podcast.
Ralph Fiennes was pretty pressed in this.
He was pretty pressed. In this, his hair was pretty pressed.
He was thinning as the movie was going on.
And I love even like when, because it's no secret, Bond has retired and he comes back to to M, and he finds him at his table, and it's like, did this desk get smaller,
or did the desk get bigger, or did you get smaller?
He knows how to poke him, Bond knows,
because he's not his favorite M, right?
Yeah.
Judi Dench is always going to be his favorite.
No matter
Dame Judi Dench, put the respect on her name.
No matter how strained the relationship was, no matter how much shit she gave him, they knew that they had an unbreakable bond.
And it was it's subliminal to like the mother. Like,
no matter what Bond is going to do, even if he defies her, she knows that he's going to do what's right.
Yeah. Right. I also like the story that was told in terms of just relationships and family, and Bond just always coming from no family and never having a family, and there is parts where you see this family grow and he sees it himself, and that's the sad part, because he never had that, especially with his colleagues, because he would always treat his colleaagues as
I mean his
people that
they were there,
build things for him,
they're tools for him.
Yes,
and I mean his stepbrother like Blofeld turned out to be one of his biggest antagonists, right? So like he's very much a broken person.
Yeah, and I love how they focused on that a bit, and how it plays into the character and how this movie ends as well.
I think a big shout out to Léa Seydoux.
Fantastic job.
She coming back to be one of the only really returning quote unquote Bond girls to return. Yeah. Someone to have a relationship with Bond and return.
Even though Vesper is mentioned a lot in the series.
Right. Yeah. But like for her to actually be in this movie, and for them to continue on that thread, I think it's a testament to hopefully this franchise evolving into more of just with modern sensibilities, but also just she's a damn great actress, and like anytime she was on screen, like she nails the assignment every single time. And there's some genuinely, I think, laugh out loud moments in this movie that are at best when they catch you off guard, because there could be something that's very serious going on, but there'll be just like this moment of levity in there, and I'm like, it's just so well placed that it will linger with you of how much it's how funny it is.
Yeah, there's a great mind blowing joke. That's all I'll say.
I loved her part, like in terms of the scenes of the movie. There's this scene where she does like she is the therapist for Mr. Blofeld, and she and Bond, see each other after a very long time, and they go into the room, and she's like, I can't be here. I don't want to be here. And it's just her presence and just how she felt. I felt like, wow, like she just doesn't want to be in the same room with these two people. And even when Bond grabs her, she like lets go. It was so realistic.
You feel her like fight or flight like there.
She clearly can't be in the room with Bond and his stepbrother and have a conversation. It was really, really well done, I think. And she says something to Bond. I don't remember it, but it was very fitting. And I
also like how she's not the damsel in distress.
No.
she's not
No. She knows
that
how to
kind
use
of
a gun.
character. She's badass. Like
Yeah.
every single character in this movie, and there was a lot of hate that came out about Lashana Lynch when she was 007. Man, fuck those people, because
100%.
she killed. I wish there was more of her. In this
I wanted
movie.
more, and that's the thing. If we're able to get a spin-off of any sort, put Lashana Lynch, put Ana de Armas in a movie together,
Yeah.
that will be top of my most anticipated movies.
I'm there
because they are
or
so
series, because that way I can keep watching it every week.
Yes, that'd be so damn good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Now, before we wrap up, did you guys have any other final thoughts before we get to our recommendations?
Shaken, not stirred. They finally get to say that in this movie too.
They do. Again, embracing all of those classic Bond elements. Before we get to our final recommendations, though, I just want to remind you, we're on a mission to hit 200 5-star reviews. Like I said, we love to leave you reviews every week. Now it's your turn.
Using it again, eh?
Yeah, just because I want them to remember.
All right.
We want you to leave us some now.
Fair enough.
Of course, make sure you're following us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd. We are heading into a really big week of movie reviews as well. So starting off with No Time to Die this week, we'll also have a review of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and The Many Saints of Newark. So it's a really big movie week. We're going into a really big movie time of the year as well. So if you like what we're doing, make sure you give us a 5 stars. Make sure you follow us on all the social media, and make sure you write into the show because we want to hear from you. Thank you for being with us on this journey as well. Shay, start us off with your final recommendation of No Time to Die.
It's a watch it. If you're a fan of the Bond series, you are gonna love where this goes and how this ends. And I'm so happy for Craig. I'm so happy for Daniel Craig. So watch it.
Anthony.
This is a watch it. I would highly recommend you go watch it in theaters or wherever you watch
IMAX.
movies. IMAX. Fantastic job. I think great send off. Everything from beginning to end, I think, does the character justice, as well as Daniel Craig's send off is fantastic, and how this is his last Bond. Like, we know that, and with all the baggage that was with it, they came along with it. It was always, we were worried as a team, just, is this Bond going to be, the Bond that Craig can retire with or not? Like, is it going to be like a crappy send off? But it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little long, but I give it respect because it is his last one, and I think
Definitely,
you'll enjoy it for sure.
For myself, this film is a long time coming, obviously, and I'm so happy that it ends Craig's era as James Bond on the highest possible note. I loved the entire cast of this movie. I loved just every minute of it. Like Anthony said, this film is long. You may feel the length, but with it being his final film, with it being his send-off, and what a send-off it is, it's definitely earned every minute, every second. Definitely watch it on the big screen, watch it in IMAX, because you are going to love this movie. And I think collectively, the three of us were just so relieved that Daniel Craig got his due, and we are now looking to see what happens next with the James Bond series. Thank you so much for listening to the movie podcast review of No Time to Die. Don't forget, you could catch a brand new episode of the movie podcast every single Monday. We have a new episode out right now, and you could catch our review episodes and all the latest movies and series. Make sure you follow us at The Movie Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd. Check out our show notes for all of those links and more, and send us an email at hello@TheMoviePodcast.ca. That was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.